All right, so good morning, everybody. This is Joe Mo Stewart, and Mr. Jim Dotson will be stepping in just a moment. Today is Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. It's the Energy for All Alaska Task Force meeting. This morning we are graced, happy to have a couple of air quality experts. We have Ms. Cindy Heil from the Department of Environmental Conservation, as well as Mr. Nick Czarnecki, our own local air quality manager. So as for brief introductions, Ms. Heil is the program manager for the Air, Non-Point, and Mobile Sources, ANPMS, within the Division of Air Quality, and is responsible for the development of the state implementation plans, SIPs, around the state. Ms. Heil has worked her entire career with DEC and is completing her 30th year?
I'm over 30 now.
Holy moly. I stole this from an earlier presentation where she originally started as a college intern. Ms. Heil has lived in Alaska for over 43 consecutive years. She received her Bachelor of Science in Natural Sciences and Master of Science in Environmental Quality from UAA. Mr. Czarnecki is the Fnsb Air Quality Manager. Mr. Czarnecki, let's see, is the manager for the Fairbanks North Star Borough. He has worked on air quality issues for over 15 years, including experience with the Fnsb, the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, and for the engineering and environmental consulting firm Lowen Walsh LLC. Mr. Czarnecki received his mechanical engineering degree from the University of Wyoming. And they are here today to update us on the evolving situation regarding local air quality. So Ms. Heil, if I may, the floor is yours.
All right. So like the last time I was here about a year ago, I'm just going to walk you through what's on our websites and all the materials that we have on there. So one, that you can find it, and it's always there for reference. We made a lot of help documents that will have a lot of the handouts that are kind of thing that will have all the details of the majority of what's in this amendment. So just to recap about where we're at, about a year ago, we did the serious SIP, and in that SIP, we acknowledged that we could not meet attainment by 2019 because we could not do our rolling 3-year design value to meet the standard. So we knew that going into it. We also said that we would have to do a plan within a year because we failed to meet attainment. And we were going to call that plan the 5% plan. Well, it turns out that we didn't know as much as we thought we did, so it's actually an amendment to the serious SIP, not a whole new plan. So what this is just an amendment to the existing serious SIP that meets the requirements of the 5% reductions per year. So because we failed to meet attainment in 2019, we have to demonstrate that we can meet, we can meet attainment as expeditiously as possible, and that we have to show progress, and that we have to show that we can meet, we can reduce the air quality by our emissions inventory 5% per year. So this is actually a fairly technical amendment to meet to be able to show all those requirements. Attainment year, 5% reduction per year, and that we're meeting it as expeditiously as possible. Those are all specific terms that are in the Clean Air Act and in the PM 2.5 rule. So what I'm going to do is, this is the Vision homepage. We have a couple ways of getting to our all the details for this amendment. We have a link right here under Hot Topics. Eventually this link will go away and it'll be put into previous Hot Topics. So if you need to go back and look in time, it'll be there. The other way is because Fairbanks is, we're doing so much in Fairbanks, we put a little link on the front page. So it's a quick link to get to what we call the Fairbanks Particulate Matter PM 2.5 community homepage. This has all the information that we have on air quality. I will take this opportunity to point out that this link right here is to all the control measures. We keep this up to date. This has the latest and greatest information of everything is in the serious SIP. So there's that link. You can come up to here and you can always see what could be out for proposal within the community. So when we do have a regulation package or the SIP out for public comment, you can get it here super quick. And Once we're done with it once this period closes, we'll start posting under previously proposed. We have all the proposals that we've had over the years since 2013 here, so you can always go back and see everything that we've done. So here we are in the proposed. It's our proposed page. It's our amendment page. This is how you can find the official public notice, our proposed regulation, and I'll jump into that really quick. Our proposed regulation is one item. We are only proposing to amend 18 AACO 50.030A, which is what incorporates the SIP into regulation by reference. So that's the only regulation that we're proposing at this point in time. The other thing is that if you want to find out where all the actual chapters and sections are, you come into this page and here it has it proposed. So it's only these segments within each of these chapters that is being proposed. It's out for public comment. So now we'll get to the nitty-gritty stuff. So here under the help documents, we have a document, and this lays out all the changes that we've out for public comment that we're proposing. So this little table, this little handout that you can print at any point in time or refer back to is a cheat sheet for what all is being changed. So as you can see, the first 3 chapters of the Serious SIP has no amendments. We have the ambient air quality trends. So one of the technical edits that or one of the advantages of doing this amendment is now we get to use all the latest and greatest information. So before there was frustrations when we did the Serious SIP because we were seeing the reduction in the air quality, the monitored air quality, and we weren't able to use it. We had to use, and I'll go back, I'll have all that in another graph here shortly. But we get to start including all the latest monitoring and modeling data this round. So we've updated the subsection of their quality trends to incorporate all that. The latest in the network, we have the new annual air quality monitoring plan is here in the appendix. Emission inventory, we're giving an overview update, but the most of it is just we're adding a new section. Okay, so this is all a new section with all the latest emission inventories information and their appendix to support that data. In the control strategies, we're not amending, we're not adding really anything new in the control strategies except this one new section to address all the federal requirements that are required. And then we have this appendix document, which I'll call attention to. We're providing evidence of that we're implementing the moderate and the serious SIP. So in the serious SIP, it had a document that said evidence of implementing the moderate SIP. Well, this is evidence of continuing to implement the moderate and the serious SIP. The reanalysis of the non-implemented control measures. So one of the items that we had to do is we had to go back through and all the control measures that we did not implement, we had to reanalyze and say whether or not we needed to put them in, put it in this round or not. So that's analysis is here. All the ESP summary reports from their testing. We did a revised cost effectiveness analysis for using the latest information that we had and a cost effectiveness analysis of char boilers since we got new information from that. Then we updated the modeling. We had to do a full replace of the attainment demonstration. We did a full replace of the reasonable further progress and qualitative milestones. We added a new subsection for the contingency measure, and I'll go into that in a little bit. We updated 3 tables and some minor text revisions in the emergency episode plan, which I'll show you. And we replaced a full replacement of the air quality conformity and motor vehicle emissions budget. So that's there to refer back at any point in time. So now I'm going to jump over here to this one. This is the technical information on the monitoring. This is probably what everybody's most excited or interested about. So as a reminder, we monitor every day at our our sites. So the 98th percentile is the 8th highest value. And that's when you see that's called the design value. So these are the 8th highest values. These are the ones that EPA sets our, sees if whether we're in attainment or not. And so these are the values that show what the 98th percentile value was in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. A Street, we finally got a full winter here. Then what you do is you take the average of 3 years and you get the 3-year design value. That's in the white. It's the 3-year design value that determines, it's a rolling 3-year design value. So these 3-year design values based on the 1 years is what determines whether or not you're meeting attainment or not. So as you can see, we had it really high in 2016 at Hearst Road. We were over 100. That is the standard is 35 micrograms per cubic meter. You can see that the NCORE site, has been bouncing around, is really low for the past 4 years. The 3-year design value for that monitor is showing attainment. You can see in the state office building that we were getting, in 2019, we were showing attainment. And you can see the trend from the Hearst Road going down. So then what we did, and this is where people would get confused a little bit, is that we, for modeling, yes.
If I may.
Yes.
Where's A Street?
A Street is, oh my goodness. Do you remember where that is, Nick? Exactly.
It's Hamilton Acres.
Sorry,
Hamilton Acres, that's right. Thank you.
yeah,
Okay,
by Nordale School is where it is.
Thank you.
Okay. So then what we did for the Serious SIP is we had to use a 5-year average over 2020, 2011, and 2015. And so for the Serious SIP,
Ms. Heil, if I may ask one more thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is there any way you can make your view a little bit bigger? We may have some folks trying to look on their phones.
I've got it maximized. Let's see. Zoom. Is that better?
Boom. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. So the Serious SIP, we used, this was our modeling design value, 131, if everybody remembers, back then, and it was really high, and that required a lot of control measures, and that was the rule, following the rules. So for the 5% plan, or the amendment to the Serious SIP, we got to change our base year to 2013, and we got to use a design values of 2016 and 2019. So now our design value for this amendment is 64.7. So that's a lot of technical information, but the big takeaway is this is what we used for the Serious. Now we get to use this. So it takes advantage of all the latest information and all what the community has been doing.
Would another takeaway be that we have seen appreciable improvement in our air quality?
That's what this, you can see these are the actual values. Yearly, the rolling 3-year average, and then what we call the modeling, which is an average over these 4 years, and this is over 5 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what that meant was we got to recalculate and remodel the attainment demonstration. So that was a requirement we have to show. So in the Serious SIP, we modeled attainment for 2029. And that was again, had a lot of consternation about that. So now we got to plug in these numbers, and I can tell you that we had no idea when, we were perfectly honest last time around, we had no idea what the values would be. Once we updated the base year, we updated all the latest and greatest information from monitoring, emissions data across the board, plugged it all in the model. So we made a guess and we said, well, let's try to model 2026. So we did that. We got that answer probably about in July, I'd say. So we're like, oh my goodness, this is so much lower than we were expecting for 2026. We have to show expeditious. We also have to show attainment. So then we ran, it takes a long time to run all these models. We ran the model in 2024. Lo and behold, we still were below the 35, which is really exciting. So then we ran it again in 2023, and now we're above the standard. So we're showing attainment in 2024. This means that all the control measures that are fully implemented by 2023, by the end of 2023, we were able to take credit for, and that showed our attainment, projected modeling attainment by 2024. This is a very good number in that it's below 32. In the previous rule and in other pollutants, EPA has what's called a safety factor. Now the new rule did not have a safety factor, but the old rule had 32. So we were shooting to have below 32 because that gave us some wiggle room to account for any variation in weather and whatnot. So having it at 30 gives us a comfortable margin, but it is, let me point out, it is a very steep trajectory. It means we have to do all of our control measures, continue to implement everything we're doing in order to make that mark. So we cannot take our foot off the gas pedal. It's full tilt, continue to do everything we can and everything we are committed to doing, and this is what it's modeled, okay? However, the rubber hits the road. If we show up at these years and then we don't monitor that, then we don't make attainment. This is just modeling. Is there any questions about this information?
So the little box at the bottom right now, again, is specific to the Hearst Road.
That's correct.
That area.
Mm-hmm. Because it's the violating monitor.
Hi, Cindy. This is Patrice. Could you comment on the level of compliance that's required to fully implement what you've proposed?
We took a fairly conservative compliance rate, starting with about 20 to 30, and then up to 50% by the time we get to 2024.
So does meeting this attainment depend on people then following the rules?
It is dependent on, as I said, that all control measures are fully implemented.
Okay.
So we
Could
still
you
have
talk a little bit?
Well, let me finish about the whole thing about the series SIP, and then the amendment, and then we can go into details, if that would be okay. All right.
Please.
So that's all the technical data for that's the basis of the amendment. Then we have the emergency episode plan. Remember I told you we'd have edits. So we have no new control measures proposed, but we are proposing a new contingency measure. We have to have one in there. They would prefer we had more, but we're putting in one. And this only happens if EPA issues a finding of failure. It's on the effective date of that finding of failure to either attain or to meet reasonable further progress goals. We would have to implement this control measure, and that would be we are proposing that our contingency measure is that our stage 2 air alerts would drop from 30 micrograms per cubic meter to 25. So that's our contingency measure. The other thing that we're doing is we're proposing to delete the incentive that we had in for ESPs. Because of the testing that was done by the borough and the limited testing by the state, indicators are that they're not quite ready to be incentivized. So we are proposing to remove the incentive for the ESPs. That, as we said in that first table I showed you of the edits, this is with some minor text edits, this is the majority of the edits for the episode chapter.
It's going to come up, so why don't we just go ahead and address it now? Why would the ESPs be falling off the list?
So Nick's here, he can give you the whole spiel of the studies that were done. So, you know, GVA found creosote in a number of their devices that were out in the field that had been put in. They've removed all those. In the state testing, we did tests on a cat stove and a non-cat stove. One of the non-cat stove, after only 30 hours in a controlled setting, so this was in a lab, everything was controlled, dry wood, it built up creosote and actually plugged up the ESP and stopped functioning after 30 hours. So there's safety concerns there with that level of creosote buildup that we saw. Those study results, those pictures are all up on our website. And then you know, we see that there's potential for ESPs to be help with emission reductions on non-catalyst stoves, but really didn't see anything. It's not much of a reduction for catalytic stoves, and a little bit for pellets, but it's not really something that we feel that should be incentivized at this point, especially since there is a safety concern, and until they address the safety issue, it's just not something that that should be done at this point in time. These are proposed. We're fine to take comments on that. So if Nick, if you want more on the ESP testing, Nick, you know, can talk to that if that's what you guys would like to go. So the biggest thing about this amendment is that there's no new control measures. There's the one contingency measure. It is a technical edit, so we updated the design value as I showed you. We updated the base year. We did a new attainment date, and we have a model attainment. So there are several ways to comment. So there's a little how-to comment form that you can print out or use. It tells you can do oral comments at our public hearing. We're only going to have one. We're using the Legislative Information Office to provide oral testimony because that seems to be the most robust. It's in the evening. You can send written comments in, you can send email comments in, you can fax, or ideally what we would hope is that everybody would use the electronic format, comment form, for formal comments to use our online system. I will say that the commissioner is very, really likes electronic, and any comments that we receive before the end of the comment period, we will be posting as we receive them. So you, if you want your comments out there and people to see them, if you get them into us early, we will get them posted. We won't answer the comments until after into the public comment period, but we will get the comments up online. Questions and answers, any questions we receive before the cutoff date on October 19th, we will try to get we'll get those answered if you get into them in writing, get them answered and posted. If you remember, here's last year, the serious SIP. Ultimately, we had a lot of questions that came in, and we have them like this so you can go see what they were. Back up. We have a bunch of questions and answers already that are general about this plan. So it's here. As we get questions, we will get them answered and posted and added on. So that's helpful for a reference as well. And again, we're meeting with the Assembly on Thursday. We're having a joint meeting with the Assembly and the Pollution Control Commission. That presentation will get posted here. And again, our hearing. So this is a great big overview. Nick, is there anything that you think I should, I missed?
No, I think that you hit all of the main points, Cindy. And yeah, we'll just be available to dig a little bit deeper on any topics that folks want to in the next 30 minutes.
Right. And so here's the link to the comments. As we get comments in and we post them, you'll be able to find them here.
Now,
So
I did note a difference in dates between comments and questions.
that's
It said
correct.
Comments, okay, so comments should be in by the 15th, which would be a Thursday, a couple weeks from now. And then questions.
Yeah. Comments have to be in by the 29th. That's the end of the public comment period. Questions have to be in by October 19th. We have to, so that's a state legislator statute that requires that any questions you have that we get in writing or orally during the oral hearing get posted prior to the close of the public comment period. But you have to have time to get them answered and posted. So the idea being that if you have some questions and you want to submit them in writing to the question link there, then what we'll do is get them posted and you can see those questions, those answers before the end of the public comment, so you can add that information to your comments if you so desire. So the legislative put that in there. So you can put questions at any time, just that formal questions, we have to have a cutoff date in order to get them answered and posted so people have an opportunity to review the data before the end of the public comment period.
And that date would be?
End of the date of the public comment period is October 29th.
Okay. We do appear to have a question from Representative LeBlanc, please.
Yes, thank you, Jomo, and thanks for the presentation. Road monitor and the attainment goal, I believe that was in 2024, 2026, but how much does the Interior Energy Project and natural gas service into the Hearst Road General North Pole area, how much does that contribute to reaching attainment here in 4 to 6 years? And how much does the usability investments, the Aurora Energy Project with the wood drying kiln, how much does all of that contribute to reaching attainment, and is that worked into the model? And how is that measured year to year to reach the attainment goal?
Okay, so that's a big complicated question. So let me take Aurora first. Right now, there's nothing in the SIP regarding Aurora. So one of the things you have to remember about the serious SIP and this amendment and control measures. Control measures, in order to take credit, have to be enforceable and permanent. So the kiln is something that's coming up online. We haven't had any discussions at this point with Aurora on what they are willing to do that's permanent and enforceable. So it is categorized more of a it could be considered SIP strengthening. It can be voluntary, and in all voluntary control measures, anything and everything is voluntary is lumped together for just a 6%. And that's what's voluntary. So the Aurora kiln at this point in time doesn't have anything that's enforceable or permanent. So for natural gas, we've been really, really conservative on the natural gas. We can always put more in, but there's very little in natural gas in these early years. It's mostly in the projections for after 2024. Using the, oh my goodness, Nick, do you remember what the report name is that we used?
Oh, and
I'm blanking.
yeah, I'm trying to remember the consultant's name that prepared that report, but yeah, using the projections of the build out of the natural gas infrastructure.
Is it Cardio? Yeah. Is it the
Cardno.
Cardno-Intrix, that's it.
So we have incorporated that, and we use the build out numbers from that report. So because again, it's not enforceable, it's not permanent yet. What we have done is that anything that's already put into place when we do these amendments, we take credit at that point in time. So that helps with the base years. Lower our emissions that we start out with, so that taking 5% of a smaller base makes it easier to show progress. So showing progress in our qualitative milestones are a huge thing, because if we don't show 5% reduction per year and meet our qualitative milestones, then that would trigger a contingency measure. So when we do an amendment, we go back and look at all the existing information. So anything that had been in place that we can verify and justify emission reductions, that helps our base. So anything up to this point when we did this from anything that was completed through 2019, we took advantage of that. Does that answer your question?
Rep. LeBon?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to put my arms around the reliability of the model actions, and you mentioned enforcement and voluntary actions. In that Hearst Road area, voluntary actions includes the wood stove exchange program that the borough put together, burning dry wood, and on heavy pollutant days, refraining from burning wood. Are those all the factors that are moving that needle the most?
Yes. Because wood is the primary problem. So the wood dose changeout has a huge impact on that. So Nick, you want to?
Yeah, the real primary drivers with the residential wood sector, as you mentioned, Representative LeBon, we've got the wood stove changeout program, which the borough is operating, and that program is fairly well funded right now, and we're really targeting the maximum emission reductions, which are converting wood stoves to another source of fuel, such as fuel oil or emergency backup generators or natural gas. For those folks that wish to do that through the voluntary program, the state operates the curtailment program, which is another heavy hitter. The state also has new requirements for newly installed stoves at point of sale, and that's a pretty heavy hitter. And and then there's also the dry wood requirements, which are the sale of dry wood, and of course the Aurora kiln does really help meet those dry wood requirements and hit those numbers. And I think those are the heavy hitters that really help out with the residential wood smoke sector.
Right. The other one is that we have our existing contingency measure that was triggered and goes into effect October 2nd, and the drop dead date of removal of uncertified stoves by 2024. So those are also big reductions that we're going to see. So the serious SIP had the removal of 2024. All non-certified EPA, non-certified stoves. It also has dry wood only commercial sales, and it also has a fuel switch in 2022. Those are all key as well. But on October 2nd, we had to we have to trigger our contingency measure from the serious SIP, which is that all stoves now, regardless of EPA certification or non-EPA certification, if they're 25 years or older, need to be removed by 2025 if their emission rate is greater than 2.0 grams per hour. Those were also taken into account. The real estate measure is that if you have a wood device that's part of property that's being sold after October 2nd, this Friday, anything older than 25 years has to be removed or replaced. So those drop dead dates are whichever's first, if it's being moved by property or if it's 2024. Though that is going to incentivize quite a bit of change out as well. So we're trying to get the word out, Nick's trying to get the word out that we're funded. We've applied for another targeted airshed grant. It's going to get more money into the targeted into the change out program to help with conversions. That application also had some element for wood to wood conversion. We heard a lot from the public who wanted that. But the trick is we have to make sure that the wood stoves are very clean. So we're going through a lot of work to more scrutiny on the types of wood stoves and their EPA certification, so that only those devices on our approved list we know are really clean. So all those in combination are helping get us to 2024, and we took all those into account.
We had a specific question regarding conversion to oil, number one, fuel oil. What's the date certain on that?
October 2022.
October of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you remember right, the original Serious SIP proposal was 2021, and based on comments received, we provided more time. So it's in 2022. 2021 is the commercial dry wood seller requirement, that all wood sold by commercial entities will have to be dry. It's a dry wood. There's already a requirement that has been there for quite some time that you're only supposed to burn dry wood, but now there's going to be you have to register to sell wood in Fairbanks, non-attainment area, and now you'll only be allowed to sell dry wood, and that goes into effect next year.
Cindy, this is Patrice. I just wanted to let Representative LeBon know that in the Cardinal report, there was no data included on wood to gas conversion. So people who burn wood only were not included in the report at all as having a transformation to gas. And then Cindy, at some point appropriate, would you talk about enforcement and what is different now than has been in the past?
I don't think there's really anything that's different with regard to, except for COVID. COVID's, it is what it is here. It is, people are recognizing that. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult this year, I think. But we're still going out and doing observations. We're still writing letters. We're still doing all the effort we can to get compliance.
Have there been any enforcements other than the two we know about in the last 3 years?
I'd have to go check with that. I believe we're going to have those statistics on the call with the assembly on Thursday. They're getting compiled now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We had a follow-up question regarding COVID. Do you have an impression of how COVID, the shutdown and sequester have affected PM 2.5 levels, such as displayed on purple air?
So purple air is a instantaneous reading. It's short term, and the amendment and all that are built on the 24-hour averages. So, with more people staying home, we're not quite sure what's going to happen with that. This is going to be an interesting winter because it'll be something we have never really dealt with, and we have to see how it's going to pan out. But it's something we have to be aware of.
Okay. We did have another specific question regarding the Hearst Road monitor. It says, I assume the 5% reduction is based on 64 parts per million at Hearst Road monitor. Is that correct?
No, the 5% reduction is on the emission inventory. So what you do is you have to quantify all the emissions from all the sources and come up with what's your base year, and then you subtract your emission reductions from that emission inventory by 5% per year. And we have to set up qualitative milestones, and we have to set up reasonable further progress, and then we have to submit reports. Our first report will be based on the 2020 year, and it's due in March of 2021.
Okay.
So we'll have to. You set the goals and the targets in the plan, and then you have to prove it that you're meeting them, and we have to submit it to EPA, and EPA has to sign off on it. And if they find a failure, then we have to turn on our contingency measure. But we're feeling, based on the modeling and what we're seeing with the emissions, we feel that we can meet our milestones and our reason for the progress between now and 2024.
Cindy, this is Mike Brox. I was asking that question. How does the public then monitor the, I guess, emissions inventory to track that progress?
Well, we'll have the reports out every 3 years. So it's not something if you look at, let's go see, 7, appendix. Oh, where is the emission inventory chapter?
7.6.
Is it 6? Oh, I'm always going too far. Oh, there we go. Emission inventory. These are the spreadsheets that we're using. If you would like to look at them, I'm not going to open them up because they're going to take a while. They're big. So like the point sources, they have to submit their quarterly reports or annual reporting. And you have to look at all those emissions that are actuals. Okay, so that's why we're going to get all the actual emissions during the course of 2020. We have to look at them from, and we have to report on them, and we have to show that we're seeing emission reduction. So we have to look at, the Changeout program. Nick has to be very careful about his accounting. We take for every emissions device that he takes out, we know exactly the make, model year, what the emissions rating that stove was and what it was replaced with, so you can show emission reduction. So we have to calculate and track all that information, and then we will be posting reports, and the reports we have to be formally submitted to EPA. So it's not something that's it's all the data's there, and we're posting it on what it was all built on.
So is it possible then that there could be a reduction shown at the monitor, but not necessarily in the inventory?
Well, that's two different ways of measuring. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
you're going to see, so, I mean, EPA is redundant, right, on making sure. So when you make a plan, you're projecting into the future, and you're trying to say your best guess of what the future is going to look like, and you have models and whatever. Then you have this progress where we're looking at actual emissions, but the rubber hits the road for attainment, whether you make it or not, is all monitoring on the monitoring data. So they all kind of work in together, but you can't monitor data in 2024 because it hasn't happened yet. So you have to model. And then what you do is you look in the past for your actual emissions. So you have your monitoring data, but monitoring fluctuates every year. So they look at the emission inventory data over time to see trends.
Yep.
Okay, so that's how you look for actuals. And then you have monitoring data, but monitoring data every winter, there's so much variability. You sort, that's why you have the design values and 3-year rolling averages to kind of see that as well. So you're looking at it from a lot of different perspectives, rolling it all in together, and that's how you make your determinations.
Cindy, this is Kathleen. Hey, just 2 points. One, I think you made a really interesting point. We don't know what this winter's going to look like. People are home more. We've seen wood, just to remind the group, we've seen an increase of wood emissions in the morning, and then in the evening when people come home. Now people may be home more through the day. So that'll be interesting just to see what that could definitely impact. But Mike, I kind of have a question, and just to take back to the beginning. So we are amending our serious SIP to make the 5% plan. So where are we with the serious SIP? I mean, and this comment period is on your amendment. I understand that, but still don't have an approved serious SIP.
Well, state does. We have a fully approved, fully effective plan. Okay, so that's what we're amending. The state plan. It is to EPA. EPA also ultimately has the approval right? To make
Right.
it, and what they're, and just remind everybody, what that approval does is that then makes it federally enforceable. So they can come in and do enforcement as well. So, you know, Congress made the rule, you know, with the Clean Air Act. This is all Clean Air Act structured. EPA made their rule within their structures, and they've got to deal with it. So they're on the hook. You know, they had a year from the day that they determined our SIP was complete, which was this last February, I think. So they're supposed to have an action on our SIP in February. They can approve it in full. They can disapprove it in full. They can partially approve, and they can partially disapprove. We're anticipating that they're going to do at least a partial approval this fall, early winter. Then there's going to be some wrangling about, you know, are they going to do a disapproval, or are they going to, you know, see how things are going? You know, we don't know. We do know that BACT is the problem child in the room. I will draw attention to the serious amendment that we did not propose any changes to those sections of the SIP that have to do with BACT. So there's nothing in here out for public comment regarding point sources. So that was on. we feel that anything that needs to be done with the point sources should be done as part of their permitting process. So pretty much all of the applications, we did set a schedule. So everybody's turned in their applications except for Wainwright. I think they're due anytime if they haven't already got it in. They had problems with COVID getting that timeline and requested an extension, which was granted. But everybody else met their June requirements to get their applications in. So the permitting program is working to update permits to meet the requirements that we set as our back determinations. So that's moving on.
Ms. Heil, for the uninitiated who may end up watching this video after the fact, what's BACT and what does it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Best available control technologies. So we had two major hurdles with the serious plan, and that was we had to meet best available control measures and best available control technologies. And the best available control measures was we were supposed to look at every single control measure within the country, and we were supposed to implement every single one of them unless we could make a technological or economic infeasibility finding. The point sources were under the best available control technologies. They were supposed to put in the best available control technology available. That would have been millions and millions, $150 million for the community to absorb. If that were the case, the state working with the point sources made a determination. Each point source had some had some requirements that's going into their permits, but they did not put in what is it? DSI. Oh my goodness. What does that stand for, Nick?
Dry sorbent injection for sulfur control.
That's the first level. There's like 4 different technologies, but the cheapest control was this dry sorbent injection. We discounted that as too expensive, and that didn't make sense. So EPA has a national precedence that all the coal-fired plants in the nation, ours is the only ones that do not have that technology in it. So that's a contentious point to say. But we didn't put anything out for public comment. So EPA can comment, but they won't be relative to this package.
Ms. Heil, we had a couple of very high level and a couple of very, very ground level questions. And this actually, I think, would be a good segue into, well, one of the higher level ones. So you mentioned again of all the coal plants in the country, ours would be some of the only ones that don't have a particular technology or weren't forced to implement a particular technology. One of the high level questions was, it took us a while to get the EPA to kind of wrap their heads around this is an Arctic environment as opposed to where they normally do business and regulation. And they kind of grew into what were perceived as fairly good partners. Has that persisted? I know that you are presenting with them at the assembly.
We're working with EPA constantly. We meet with them very regularly on the development of this plan, on the development of the Sirius plan. Ultimately, though, they have their rules, we have our rules. We are required to make a state determination. We did that. Now they're struggling with whether or not they're going to accept that or not. We have a good relationship. We're working with them, but there's some points of disagreement, and we respect each other's sides of the issue. That's why I mentioned their precedents and where they're feeling they're having a hard time, because our Region 10 has been great. They're really trying to help our issues out, and headquarters looks at everything nationally. Region 10's, trying to deal with our region and respect our uniquenesses. So the jury's still out on that. I have no idea how that's going to all play out.
Do we still feel that the stakeholder process was a good one? And
the stakeholder progress was critical. If there's no way we could have gotten that SIP done last year if we hadn't had this stakeholder process to build on.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's do some of the very rubber hitting road. There were a couple of economic questions. Has DEC estimated the cost to individual homeowners of converting from certain appliances to, say, gas or fuel oil?
Want me to take this one, Cindy?
Yes, that'd be great.
So what was done in the Sirius SIP and in the 5% amendments for an economic analysis was looking at a select suite of control measures that basically were economically infeasible. And so we don't have a published economic analysis for the control measures that were implemented and for those specific items that were asked about. But we do have economic analysis for the control measures that were deemed too expensive to put in. For example, doing fuel oil boiler conversions and upgrades on the burners, that was too expensive. And, a couple of other ones that were too expensive. But if you have specific questions about the economic analysis, I think definitely you can contact Cindy or myself, and we can let you know exactly what we do have and what was published out there.
And we do have some of the cost analysis out there, like I showed you on that previous page.
Okay. We do have another question. Approximately how many conversions to natural gas are being processed this year with input or assistance by the Fnsb with, say, Fed or other funds?
Conversions to natural gas. If you give me just 1 second to open up my projections, I can pull that number up. We're looking at doing, let's see, on the projection data.
Now, IGU is nearing completion of their storage facility out in North Pole. And so in the transition from 20 to 21, they'll actually be in a position to start making sales into that system. But again, they haven't quite gotten there yet.
So we are looking at doing a total of 381 projected changeouts for this fiscal year. Those numbers have been obviously affected by COVID, and our totals to date right now are sitting at 100. So we're probably going to fall a little bit short of that projection. And then the conversions to natural gas for 2020 are projected at 139. And so that includes both the borough's oil boiler to natural gas and the folks that go from wood to natural gas. And because of COVID, I would expect that to be a little bit smaller.
Nick, would that be, are you going on people who have filled out an application to do that, or people who are actually going to do that on those conversions, projections, or are they simply projections?
And so those projections are based on historical data, Patrice. And so what we do is every quarter we go back and look at the historical data, and then we adjust our projections based on our funding and the goals that we want to meet and the capacity that we have, the program capacity. And so they're fairly refined projections, and we're typically doing pretty well aside from the little dip that we saw with COVID. And so historical values, not on the applications that are in-house.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have a question specifically regarding the SIP and possible further amendment of the SIP. What would be necessary to amend the Sirius SIP beyond what you are proposing at this time? For example, if a change of a grant to offset the new wood kiln to Aurora were contemplated. Rick, you may need to ask this one yourself.
Sure, and we've talked about this before, but I guess I just want to kind of consider what's involved in amending the Sirius SIP beyond what you guys have proposed. But one specific thing, and you talked a little bit about this, Cindy, is the kiln, and there's nothing in there now. No enforceable actions. You haven't really had discussions with Aurora. We're excited about the kiln. But,
we are too.
But it needs to be successful, and I believe that there's a real economic challenge, and I still think that there's value in DEC recognizing that in some fashion. So can you talk maybe generally, but then specifically from a technical standpoint, what would have to happen?
If we were to receive data and information specific to the kiln, there's a section in what's out for public comment right now that's, what is it called? Control measures for the future, or things for future consideration, or things like that. There's a kind of catch-all, and we could add, in response to comments received, if we had information submitted to us about the kiln, all the details, we could incorporate that into the SIP, probably into that section in a response to comments. Okay, we couldn't really take any credit. We couldn't do anything because there's nothing for enforceability or whatnot. It doesn't mean we can't in the future, but this SIP is due. This amendment to the SIP is due to EPA by the end of the year. So we're on a fast track to get it done. If there's something substantive that needs to be put in here, we would have to go back out for public comment, which would delay everything. So if you wanted something that was you had a proposal for a regulatory enforceability limit or whatever, a commitment, we would have to draft something up and then go back out for public comment to incorporate it. I suspect, even though I'm not planning on it, but I suspect that we will be amending the Sirius SIP in the future. This is not the one and done. Even this amendment is probably not one and done. We are working on a modeling update. So the platform, our existing model is old. It was built around the state office building monitor. We collected all the speciation data last winter. We have contracts in place. We're trying to find the episodes. We're trying to do all the technical work. That's a year or so, 2 years away worth of effort to do. So if it turns out that update is beneficial to the community. We may do an amendment at that point in time to incorporate that. We can, again, what we will do if we ever do an amendment, we use the latest and greatest data across the board. We can implement things there. We can, there are times when you do minor amendments to SIPs. For example, the motor vehicle emissions budget, which is a very important component of the plan that helps with fast planning and how you deal with your federal highway funds. EPA is coming out with a new model within the next year. We have a grace period. We have a certain amount of time before we're mandatorily required to use that model. And sometimes in the past, you're not required to update your SIP to that model. However, sometimes it is more beneficial to a community to update the SIP to that portion, the motor vehicle emission budget chapter, to incorporate that new model, so it's easier for the fast planning and their federal highway dollar conformity, what is called conformity determinations. So there are times when you have minor amendments to do things like that. We could always include adjustments to control measures. Now, we can't remove a control measure. We can't backslide. We could add, or we can make slight modifications that aren't backsliding. So there are times that's possible to do amendments to the SIP. These are just a few examples that could be done to incorporate, new items such as the kiln. So while I think that if you wanted to have it in the SIP that you should comment on that, we might be able to find places. I mean, I can look it up if you would like me to, the exact section of the SIP. You could amend, you could submit your comments under. So
You can send me that, or I can look that up. I think you've described the process well. And,
so it's potential future control measures currently undergoing research efforts or development. So this is the section that we could add the kiln into if we had data. So you could make a comment on 7.7.12.10 and ask that we include the kiln because it's under development, and give us the data, the size, what your projections are, all that kind of stuff. And I think that as a response to your comments, we probably could look at putting it into this section. You can see that this is where we've put housing, the energy program, expanded gas and use of natural gas, the SIP, the studies on the ESP. So it's kind of like it's a place that we can add things like that, things that are under development or ideas that have some ground, have some information into it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And folks, this is Nick, and I think I'm going to have to drop off here in about 2 minutes. Cindy and I have another call starting at 10 after the hour, and so hopefully we can wrap things up. And
okay, well then this is maybe a good final question. Well, certainly here in the chat box. Where would one look to see the maps of the locations of the various monitors?
In the
Or is there
third
a map of current monitor locations versus previous locations?
Goodness gracious. So all the monitoring data is here in section 5, the monitoring program and the network. We have air quality trends also in these 2 chapters. And there's the whole 2020 network plan is also available. So the other thing is that if you were to really quick go to air online services, air quality air quality index, these are all the monitoring live information that's happening. These are all the monitors. It doesn't have necessarily a thing, but you can go into each of these monitors and see, kind of where they're at, what the pictures look like, station detail. So we also have that online. So,
Thank you.
all right. And someday, if you ever want to have Air Quality 101 and me lay out all the stuff that we have on our web pages, you can find anything and everything you've ever thought you possibly could want. I'd be more than happy to give a walkthrough of our web pages. We have a lot of information that you can get at your fingertips. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, everybody, we have run a bit beyond the hour. Ms. Heil, Mr. Czarnecki, as always, thank you so much. Thank you both for the work that you do and trying to help us clean up our air, but also for giving us, being available to help us novices wrap our heads around this important issue. Much appreciated.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and anytime we'll make time to help you guys anytime.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank
well,
you.
Everybody, just a little final note before we sign off. So just know there will be no meeting next week. Again, there will be no meeting next week. Don't tell your bosses. The reason I'm letting you off next week is because it's municipal election day so that you can all go out and vote. So there's lots of information regarding the potential candidates, or the candidates, both the incumbents and the new entrants all over. So if you do please take the time to inform yourself on the issues, inform yourself regarding the candidates for the city councils, the assembly, the school board, and then again, next Tuesday, get yourself out there and vote if you haven't done it in advance. And you also have lots of different options for how you can do it not in person, as well as lots of options for doing it in person. In any case, everyone have a great week. Thank you as always, and we will see you 2 weeks hence, where we have Mr. Chad Schumacher from former Superior Pellet Fuels, Aurora Energy, regarding a status update on that new wood drying kiln. They've been working Huckley Buck all summer, and it is coming together, so he'll be updating us on that. All right, everybody, have a great couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you soon.